Discover Asahel, the Bible's 12th warrior, an incredible story of divine power and transformation. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the sun beat fiercely upon the valley just beyond Hebron, where the air vibrated with the fervor of battle preparations. The mighty warriors of King David's army assembled, their swords clanging and bowstrings taut, a resounding chorus echoing off the sun-baked hills. Here stood Asahel, the swift warrior, his heart quickening at the sound. He was the younger brother of Joab, known for his remarkable speed, anointed for this tumultuous time when the throne of David stood besieged by enemies. Asahel felt the drawing of divine purpose, as if his feet were guided by unseen hands, flitting across the dusty ground like a bird in flight. It was a moment ripe with destiny. The heavy weight of conflict loomed in the air, a vivid reminder of the struggle for God's chosen leadership. Would he pursue his own ambition, or obey the higher calling of the Almighty, who had blessed David to shepherd his people? The fierce clash erupted, a tapestry of war unfolding before him. Gog and Magog echoed around as men clashed, the ground trembling under the weight of armor and shields. Asahel watched the chaos sprout and spread, each cry of valor instilling courage in his heart. Among them, he spotted Abner, the commander of Saul's beleaguered army, moving surely through the furor. Asahel recognized the embodiment of all that threatened their king and felt the burning call to pursue this formidable adversary. Abner! He shouted, his voice rising above the tumult, as every eye turned towards him, the resolve in his heart pulsing like a war drum. Abner paused, surprise flickering across his face, a commanding figure amidst the chaos. Asahel, turn away. You are neither strong enough nor wise enough to engage me, he warned. Asahel felt an exhilarating rush surging through him, defiance blossoming in his chest. He wouldn't cower in fear, but instead, heed the divine mandate stirring inside. Each step drove Asahel forward, the dust swirling around him like a fervent prayer. He pressed on resolutely toward Abner, yet the tension within mirrored the conflict unfurling outside. Loyalty and ambition warred in his spirit, and he sensed that God's hand may intervene miraculously in this chase. With a glance toward his fellow warriors, men of faith and valor, he yearned for their unity, a shared bond in the fight for righteousness. That in this breathless pursuit, Asahel grappled with the choices laid before him. The thrill of glory beckoned him, but so did the quiet whisper of God's sovereignty urging patience and purpose. The clamor of battle swelled, mirroring the tempest within him, as the crossroads of valor and divine will collided with each pulse of his heart. What did true victory require? Would it be to vanquish his enemy or align himself with God's higher design? Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As Asahel's pursuit led him closer to Abner, the gauntlet of options lay before him. Would he chase fleeting glory, deaf to the divine call? Or would he surrender to the plans deftly woven by God? In the impending match against Abner known far and wide, would Asahel embrace the quiet power of the Almighty, trusting in unseen victories beyond the valley? With every heartbeat resonating with resolve, Asahel accelerated, confronting not just an enemy but the very essence of his faith. The weight of choices settled upon him, much like the sweltering sun, and the next moment loomed like prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. As Asahel closed the distance between himself and Abner, his heart raced not just with the thrill of the chase but with the weight of destiny resting squarely upon his shoulders. The clamor of war echoed around him, yet within his soul, a profound stillness enveloped him as God's whispers merged with the tumult of battle. The very fabric of this conflict seemed woven in the tapestry of divine providence. Step back, Asahel. Abner shouted again, resolute yet tinged with a hint of caution. There is much that you do not understand in the heart of this fight. His voice bore the resonance of experience, a reminder of the unmatched perils awaiting the reckless, yet, just as Asahel's feet pounded the ground before him, so did his spirit soar. He felt the urgency, the truth that his pursuit was beyond mere honor. He sought to fulfill the spirit of the Lord's anointed. With every stride, he sensed the deep calling of his ancestors, the blessings of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, resounding through his lineage. Abner! He cried once more, the sun glinting off his weapons. You represent the shadows of a former reign, but I pursue the light of the covenant. Today, the Lord will reveal his might in the face of our enemies. His words, bold yet trembling, sliced through the din of chaos. The warriors around them turned, suspense curling in the air like the smoke rising from the ongoing fray. Who would witness the outcome of this prophetic clash? The ground beneath Asahel stirred with the fervor of faith, and when Abner turned to flee, a primal instinct awoke inside Asahel, a call to obedience in this very pursuit. Like the swift wings of a gazelle, he chased Abner with fervor and focus, the landscape of the battle blurring around him. Onwards he surged, no longer merely a man driven by ambition, but as an instrument of God's intentions, striving for justice against injustice. The Lord's presence seemed to be inviting him deeper into the fray, to reveal a profound truth hidden beyond the battlefield. Asahel's feet barely touched the ground, propelling him toward the adversary as the backdrop of conflict peeled away from him, a battlefield stripped bare of glory and highlighted instead by the assurance of divine purpose in each step. The shadow of his will began to yield, and as they raced, Asahel acknowledged an extraordinary interplay between his fervent choices and God's sovereign guidance, and Abner, sensing the urgency of Asahel's approach, grew more desperate. Foolish youth! He berated through jagged breath as he glanced over his shoulder. You do not comprehend the covenant that governs this realm. If you press on, your fate shall be sealed. Yet Asahel, fortified by faith and a desire for freedom from the chains of oppression, pressed ahead, unable to recede in the face of God's mission. He leaned into the divine promise, believing that this chase was ordained, a vital part of the narrative penned by the Almighty. Then, in that defining moment, deeper than the turmoil of swords clashing and shouts rising, a solemn silence fell upon the fields of battle, pregnant with the weight of expectancy. With each heartbeat, Asahel crossed into realms beyond the visible, where decisions unfolded against the backdrop of divine planning. What awaited them at the end of this chase? Would it finalize Asahel's fate, or unveil a greater purpose hidden among the threads of conflict? Little did he know, the echoes of this day would shape not just his life, but the path of God's chosen people, ushering in a revelation long awaited, one that would change the destiny of nations forever. As Asahel relentlessly pursued Abner, the air grew heavy with an unspoken tension, hearts hung in the balance as the clash of steel reverberated through the valley. Abner's footsteps quickened, mingled with an encroaching dread that tormented his thoughts. He could feel the nimbleness of Asahel at his back, a specter of destiny driven by fervent zeal. For the sake of the lives that depend on this struggle, Abner muttered, I would turn back if only he would heed my words. He glanced behind one last time, the sun glancing off the edges of his armor like the flicker of hope extinguished. A choice lay before him, a fleeing soldier or a defeated commander. Meanwhile, Asahel, emboldened by the promise embedded within his lineage, pressed forward, his spirit yearning to embrace the fulfillment of God's long-held covenant. The Lord will fight for us, I need only to be still. Exodus 14 verse 14. Yet there was a fire kindling within him, compelling him to act rather than to stand still. His race was not mere ambition, it was an identity forged in heaven's flame, one that transcended earthly perceptions. What shall I do, O Lord? He whispered fiercely, reflecting the dreams of his faith that ignited the ground he trod. The answer came unbidden, resonating anew in his heart, a call to stand firm and advance. The chaos of the battlefield felt distant, muted by the intensity of their confrontation. Abner, burdened with the weight of a kingdom, called out again, his voice mixing with the din of anguish around them. You aim to defeat that which you do not understand, young Asahel. There are sinuous reasons to my actions, caution must guide your sword. But Asahel, unyielding, raised his voice in defiance, asserting, each decision is backed by divine purpose. God's hand upon us must usher forth the dawn of a new age. His declaration rang clear, igniting the air with fervor as the hearts of warriors around them caught fire with conviction. As they raced, the ground broke before them, the very earth groaning with the weight of 1,000 years of promises. The gaze of the Almighty rested upon both men, two fates entwined within the great tapestry of divine design. Then darkness loomed, casting a shadow upon Asahel's heart. Only a whisper of doubt ignited, what if it leads only to my demise? But even within doubt, the verse lingered in his spirit, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, Proverbs 3 verse 5. Finally, they reached a secluded glade, far from the clamor of battle. It was here, with the sun setting low like a divine curtain closing, that Abner turned, his demeanor shifting from flight to confrontation. His voice now carried a blend of intrigue and desperation. Why this folly, Asahel? Could you not win the hearts of men by choosing to be wise rather than hasty? I choose the path of righteousness. Asahel proclaimed, his sword gleaming with fiery resolve. I shall fulfill the vision set within me. Know this, Abner, the hand of God is upon me, and he shall bolster all that I undertake. As the tension hung thick in the air, the very skies seemed to shimmer, mirroring the weighty realities of their destinies. In that moment, the futures of countless souls flickered just out of reach, tethered to the choices both men would make. And unknown to Asahel, this fateful encounter would not only mark the end of one life, it would ignite a chain reaction, resonating through the ages. But what lay ahead? What revelation would emerge from the crucible of combat, a revelation that would echo through Israel and carve the path toward the ultimate destiny God had prepared for his people? As shadows lengthened and hearts beat fiercely, all awaited the unfolding of eternity's design. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, its fading light cast ominous shadows across the glade, enveloping both Asahel and Abner in a hushed reverence that transcended the clash of steel. Their hearts beat a frantic rhythm of fate and faith, each man caught in the throes of destiny. With a fierce determination, Asahel tightened his grip upon the hilt of his sword, sensing the gravity of his choice. You speak of wisdom, Abner, yet wisdom without the fear of the Lord is but folly. His voice carried a weight that pierced the silence, reverberating like a war cry against the weight of uncertainty. Abner's brow furrowed, a mixture of incredulity and sorrow playing across his features. Young man, must pride lead you to your ruin? Every soldier knows that valor is tempered by understanding. Heed my warning now, for this conflict will yield no victors. His gaze fell towards the ground, torn between the urgency of battle and a deepening respect for Asahel's fervor, and as the words lingered in the air, a sudden stillness enveloped them, as if the very universe paused to witness this monumental clash of wills. Birds ceased their song, and the distant cries of war faded into an eerie calm. In this silence, Abner felt the tempest within him linger, a whisper of the plight of his own people. Must I slay you to secure peace for my men? He questioned quietly, the gravity of his experience tugging at the strings of his heart. Asahel, sensing this moment as a pivotal juncture, felt the spirit of the Most High stir within him. God has a purpose, he declared, and he shall make a way where there seems to be no way. Even in darkness, his light shall shine brighter still. In defiance of the doubt hovering over him, Asahel took a step forward, emboldened by the promise of divine intervention. You, Abner, though you flee, have you not also been chosen? Your life stands as a testament to his mercy. Come, relinquish your fears, lay aside this pursuit of glory through conflict, and acknowledge that the Lord reigns still. The air crackled with an unseen force, and in that hushed moment, the heavens bore witness to their exchange. Silence shuddered, and a swell of divine power surged in protest. Abner, weary and torn, felt the sharp pang of regret for the life he must uphold, a life that seemed to dangle on the brink of decision between pride and providence. Will you follow the King of Israel? Asahel implored fervently, now feeling the full weight of the mantle bestowed upon him as one chosen to prophesy and compel. Will you abandon this veil of strife for the promise of unity under his sovereignty? Abner felt the weight of those earnest words, his spirit igniting with the embers of awakening. I have fought too long for a throne made by man, he replied, conflicted yet yearning for redemption that rose like dawn. Yet the cry of battle echoed from the distance, and the reality of their choices lingered palpably. With a sigh drawn from the depths of his soul, Abner pondered. What shall I do, then, with this fury that yearns for conflict? In that crucial moment, as both men stood poised upon the precipice of eternity, the ground trembled slightly beneath them, a divine reminder of the very foundations upon which they stood. Stand fast, and see the salvation of the Lord. Asahel exclaimed, emboldened, as he sensed a stirring in his spirit, an assurance that stretched beyond their present conflict, but little did they know, this moment would reverberate beyond the bounds of their skirmish, for the hand of Providence was secretly weaving a narrative that would touch nations, awaken destinies, and herald a transformative era among God's people. What future awaited them both as choices unfurled a divine convergence that would alter the course of Israel forever? As light surrendered to twilight, the pulse of their unseen God loomed near, waiting for the appointed time to unveil the fullness of his sovereign design. In the shadow of the gathering dusk, as the weight of their choices loomed like the heavy clouds overhead, a tension palpable as the taut string of a bow encased the heart of the glade. Asahel's voice echoed with fervor, breaking through the stillness, while Abner's thoughts raced torn between integrity and ambition, peace and pride. At that moment it was as if the very heavens held their breath, waiting for the decision that hung delicately upon the edge of uncertainty. Then, with a voice low yet resolute, Abner stepped closer, his sword loosely held at his side, an unwilling extension of his stubborn heart. Asahel, you speak of unity, of a king who reigns regardless of our quarrels. Yet know this: the blood we spill today might spill into the very soil that your people tread upon. Asahel's eyes gleamed with divine fire. And that blood shall bear witness, for every drop shed in the name of selfish ambition tarnishes the ground of our forefathers. Would you, Abner, forsake the God of our ancestors? Do not let pride drown the cries for peace that echo in the heavens. Abner's brow furrowed, sensing the parting wind as if the Spirit moved around them. He gazed into the younger man's fervent eyes, the embodiment of a faith that towered against the weight of years spent fighting for a mortal crown. What would you have me do? Shall I lay down my arms, abandon my men? I bear their hope, their fight, and in abdicating my stand, do I not fail them too? Life comes through surrender. Asahel's voice trembled with the fervor of truth, ignited by heaven's call. Remember Lot, and how he fled from Sodom, leaving behind the comforts of his past for a promise unknown. God does not abandon those who seek him. The roar of the distant armies washed over them momentarily, but within that noise, a stillness grew, a presence heavy with divine certainty. It was as if the earth itself awaited their next move with bated breath. Should I renounce my past for the uncertain ranks of the slain? Abner wrestled with his own spirit, eyes cast towards the ground where the dust cradled the cries of fallen brethren. And in that moment of strife, the heavens unfurled like a scroll. A radiant light flickered on the horizon, a fleeting glimpse of the divine purpose that threaded through their lives. Asahel, emboldened by a heavenly whisper, reached out. Your life has resonance beyond this moment. Wouldn't you serve a greater purpose, that of our God? A kingdom built not on bloodshed but on righteousness. Turning your heart might yet shift the course of nations. Suddenly, an earthquake tremor, gentle yet forceful, rippled through the ground beneath them, an invitation to awaken to a divine calling. The air thickened, alive with holy vigor, as Abner's resolve began to wane against the piercing truth. This is the hour, Asahel implored, as light illuminated the path of decision. Will you walk in the promise of unity, or let discord reign in our midst? As the last light of day faded, Abner's heart quaked under the weight of his own might. The clamor of battle seemed distant now, and in the stillness, peace beckoned. Must I surrender my pride? He pondered aloud, each word a step toward transformation. Before Asahel could speak, an unseen wind swept through them, rustling the leaves above, as heaven's melody played a symphony of hope amidst their strife. As they lingered in that sacred space, the truth of God's sovereignty began to seep into the very fabric of their beings. The effect of their choices would not only alter the present but would extend like ripples across time. And as twilight bid farewell to day, the promise of God hung ever so close, ready to unfurl its mysteries in the hearts of men. For what was this convergence but an inkling of God's sovereign design poised to birth a new era, a confrontation of flesh giving way to the Spirit's transcendence? With their next words, echoes of the future intertwined with divine purpose lingered, urging forth a revelation yet unfurling. As the last sliver of light melted into the abyss, the heavens seemed to weep for the plight of men caught in their turmoil. Within that sacred glade, the very presence of God was palpable, an unmistakable hint at the divine plan weaving through the hearts of his creation. Abner, Asahel implored, his voice trembling with the urgency of a prophet. Consider the path before you. Will the sound of clashing steel echo in your legacy, or shall the quiet roar of peace resound through the ages? Abner, caught in the tempest of emotions, felt the weight of his sword as it hung heavily at his side. Asahel, what can one man's choice alter in the fabric of this world? His words faltered, as if he sensed the stirring of truth blossoming in the soil of his heart. More than you know. Asahel declared, the fire of conviction leaping in his soul. Your decision here today, guided by the light of our God, can ripple through generations. Remember Moses, who hesitated at the burning bush. He feared he was but one man against Pharaoh, yet through his obedience, the captives were freed. Asahel's words rang true, igniting a flicker of hope within Abner's heart, but shadows of doubt lingered still. But what of my men? They look to me for strength, for boldness to confront our foes. Can I lay aside the very mantle of leadership without forsaking their trust? Trust in the Lord, Asahel urged, every fiber of his being resonating with divine authority. He called David from the fields to the throne, not upon the might of the sword but through faith that inspired an entire nation. The one who renders his heart to God becomes far mightier than the one who wields a sword. Suddenly, the winds shifted, stirring the branches into a choir of sanctified whispers. The ground itself rumbled beneath them as if the mighty hand of God reached forth in warning and hope. In that potent silence, Abner's tumultuous thoughts converged onto the moment, an intersection of fear and faith, vengeance and virtue. Then shall I speak in surrender. Abner declared, his voice no longer a battle cry but a confession of faith. Let the fate of my men rest in the hands of the Almighty. If it be His will for us to seek peace rather than blood, then I shall stand with you, Asahel. May our hearts be united under the banner of His peace. As the declaration took wing in the cool evening air, a luminous cloud descended, shimmering like a veil of glory. The atmosphere thickened with anticipation as though the celestial hosts awaited their next steps, and the very dawn of a new chapter beckoned to unfold. Then let us go forth together, the Emmanuel's chosen, Asahel proclaimed, joy washing over him like the first rain after a drought. Together they turned, hearts knitted in a shared hope. What had once been a rift now seemed a bridge to divine reconciliation, yet, unbeknownst to them, a shadow stirred on the horizon, an unseen adversary drawing near. Into the depths of their unity, schemes of chaos flickered, threatening to unsettle the harmony that was beginning to flourish. As the trumpets of war echoed faintly from a great distance, the very air shimmered with unuttered words. A divine purpose was at hand, God's master plan, shrouded in the mystery meant for both warring factions and hearts willing to surrender. For the greater glory was yet to be revealed, the waves of providence would soon crash upon the shores of history. Torn between blood and covenant, whose will would ultimately prevail in the face of divine destiny? What awaited on the road ahead would unveil the fullness of God's sovereign narrative, woven through this sacred moment. And as night hugged the earth with its shadowed embrace, the stars bore witness to Abner and Asahel's solemn pact. The light of the luminous cloud flickered above them, casting ethereal beams over the glade, as if nature itself hearkened to the agreement forged in faith. Let us gather our people, Asahel proposed, fervor kindling in his heart. We shall convene, declaring to our brethren the purpose of the Lord. It is not a council of mere men that we seek, but a communion with the divine. Abner nodded, courage kindling within. They set forth, hearts aflame with the promise of peace, unaware that just beyond the precipice of their revival loomed a force that sought to extinguish their light. Word had slipped like an asp through the tall grass to the ears of Joab, cousin of Abner, who, with iron resolve, moved swiftly among the ranks of their forces, fanned the embers of vengeance aflame. Gather, mighty men. Abner, our leader, has abandoned the blood of our enemies for the song of peace. And for this, are we to lay down our swords? Joab's voice thundered through the night as he rallied the hearts of many who had been weary with conflict but not yet willing for peace. Do not be deceived by the winds of gentleness. Where is the valor in surrender? The lion does not bow to the sheep. His words spilled forth like poison, staining the unity that Asahel sought to nurture. Meanwhile, Abner and Asahel had reached a clearing where the light of many torches illuminated the faces of their kin. The air crackled with a palpable tension as they stood before the assembly. Brothers. Sisters. We have journeyed through the shadows. Abner's voice, once mighty in conquest, now trembled with humility, but we come bearing the hope of the Almighty. Let us not turn upon one another but pursue the peace that He has set before us. The murmurs of hesitation and skepticism filled the air like a gathering storm. Asahel, sensing the unrest, stepped forward, his spirit emboldened by divine trust. Hearken to the voice of the Lord, for He hath not called us to be a people divided but united under the banner of His love. In that moment, the distant sound of war drums began to reverberate, a fearsome reminder of the battles that had brought them to this juncture. A darkness threatened to eclipse their budding unity, and as Abner gazed into the eyes of his people, he perceived the dimming light of hope shadowed by the specter of Joab's words. Will you choose loyalty to the bloodlust of man, or shall we stand as one, in strength and dignity, pursuing the path of righteousness? Asahel's voice rang clear, cutting through the din of conflicted hearts, but Joab's loyalists raised their eyes, fueled by promised glory in battle, shunning the peace offered before them. This is folly. They shouted, our fathers fought, our mothers bled. Shall we turn away from the blood of our enemies? Abner's heart sank as the seeds of discord took root. But as the crescendo of chaos threatened to engulf the peaceful resolve, the luminous cloud above burst forth in a flash of brilliance, illuminating the night. A voice, deep and resonant, broke through, fear not. For I am the God of peace, it thundered, sending a shiver of reverence through the crowd. I have set before you a choice life or death, blessing or curse. Choose life, and you shall live. The assembly stilled, gripped by the weight of that heavenly proclamation. Abner stood tall, emboldened by the voice of the Almighty, speaking directly into their hearts. Let us not fall prey to division. He cried. Ours is not the legacy of blood, but of covenant. We stand at the threshold of divine purpose, shall we not embrace it? A deep resolve surged among the people, even as Joab's followers murmured in confusion. And so it was that, nestled between the outcries of doubt and the roar of divine promise, the people stood on the verge of pivotal choice, a moment that would hinge upon the response to the Lord's call. For the adversary's shadow grew closer, and what transpired would have embers of eternal consequence that in that profound stillness. The winds of providence began to shift, echoing a reality greater than war. It whispered of a realm where the hearts of men could unite under a single sovereign plan of redemption. What lay ahead would unravel mysteries long concealed, a tapestry of divine resolve poised to be revealed. What greater work of God's sovereignty awaited just beyond the veil of their choices? As the reverberations of the Almighty's voice diminished, a deep hush enveloped the assembly. Heartbeats quickened, charged with the weight of destiny. The people looked from one to another, eyes wide with uncertainty, mingling doubt and yearning beneath the soft glow of the torches. Which voice shall we heed? A voice cried out from the rear, laden with agitation. The voice of one who speaks peace yet bears the blood of our enemies. Or shall we not reclaim what is rightfully ours? The murmurs that followed were like ripples in still waters, growing into waves of contention. Joab's presence, like a specter of their former wrath, loomed behind them, fanning the flames of dissent. Will you allow peace to dictate your fate? The sword of our fathers is a weapon of honor. Asahel felt the rush of divine urgency surging within him. Nay. It is in humility and love that we shall find our true strength. The God of Israel hath sent us this message: our true battle lies not against flesh and blood, but against the powers and principalities seeking to divide us. Abner stepped alongside Asahel, raising his hands to quell the rising tide of anger. Listen. Be still, for the Lord has spoken. A choice lies before each of us: will we embrace the peace that surpasses understanding or cling to the fleeting glory of strife? The discordant voices faltered for a moment, as if the winds had brushed through their hearts. Memories of loved ones lost in battle echoed through the stillness, mothers weeping and fathers silenced by death. Peace seemed a fragile hope, yet it glimmered like a hidden treasure beneath the ashes of war. Asahel, Joab spat, you seek to undermine the spirit of our people. You speak as though defeat is noble. What glory is there in laying down our swords when the enemy roams free? Brothers. Asahel pleaded, sincerity burning bright in his eyes, the Lord desires our unity. Shall we allow our past to dictate our future? He longs to elevate us beyond the cycle of retribution. Then, lo, a breath of wind blew softly, and again, the luminous cloud shimmered, pulsating with the divine presence. The voice that resonated earlier spoke once more, walk in my ways, and I shall establish your hearts. Forsake hatred and embrace mercy. A profound silence fell upon them, weaving between ears and hearts as a balm. Whispers of hope began to take root, nourished by the fear of the Lord's power manifest. Yet, as Asahel looked among the throng, he saw eyes still ablaze with the spirit of vengeance, heartstrings tugged between divine revelation and worldly allegiance. Who among you will rise? Asahel's voice rang out, filled with the spirit of the Lord, will you stand with me, destined for peace, or shall we yield ourselves to the chains of division and despair? The assembly swayed, faces shifting with uncertainty until Abner cried out, I am Abner, servant of the Most High. Joined in purpose, I would bear the weight of your burdens, if only to pursue the divine path laid before us. With that declaration, many took a step forward, their hearts drawn by the echo of divine promise. Others hesitated, casting glances behind them, uncertain under the shadow of Joab's defiance. And in that pivotal moment of decision, the air thickened with the weight of heaven's intention. What path would the people choose? For heaven held its breath, waiting to see if this sacred gathering would embrace the light of unity or be swallowed by the jaws of darkness. As the murmurs crescendoed into prayerful beseech, a fire ignited within Asahel, revelation illuminating the path ahead. For he understood then, a truth that would shift the course of their fate, a revelation perhaps greater than the call to peace: the battle is not ours to fight, but God's. And following him, we shall uncover the true warrior hidden within. But will they be ready to embrace the mighty vision of God's sovereign glory? And it came to pass, as the murmurs of supplication filled the air, the crowd's heart swayed like the branches of a mighty oak in the wind. Asahel, emboldened by the Spirit, pressed forward. Yet I ask you, he implored, what do you seek, fame or salvation? The Lord of hosts bids us to lay down our arms, that we might be more than conquerors through him who loves us. At that moment, a hush fell anew, as if the earth itself paused in anticipation. Joab, his eyes fierce, strode forth, his voice a rumble like distant thunder. Nay, Asahel. Shall we become sheep among wolves? The desire for vengeance stirs within this people. To forsake our swords is to invite our enemies to mock our valor. Asahel met Joab's gaze, his heart unwavering, and countered, what mockery will they offer when our unity glows brighter than the sun? Their mockery is but a fleeting shadow, our bond in the Lord endures through all trials. If we choose peace, the God of Israel shall guard us. Then Abner raised his voice, one with the fervor of the brave. Let us not be a house divided. We must remember that the Lord is our strength. Recall his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The promise is ours if we turn from our wicked ways. So let us rise together as one. Around the assembly, eyes were drawn to the flickering flames that danced joyously, and the air was thick with palpable tension. They remembered the mighty acts of their forefathers, how the Lord had delivered them from the hand of Pharaoh, split the sea for them, and could indeed bring peace upon the land. That a murmuring wave began, swelling with the desire for unity. We are the children of the living God, cried one elder, his voice imbued with conviction. Let us seize the promise and embody the change we seek. If God is for us, who can stand against us? But Joab, spoiled by the taste of conflict, scoffed, to lay down our swords is a surrender. Will the Lord genuinely fight for us without our blood shed for our kin? And what shall it profit a man, Asahel interjected, if he gains the whole world yet loses his own soul? The Lord desires not sacrifice, but steadfast hearts. He will rain down mercy upon our land if we step into the light of his purposes. The voices surged again, trapped between longing for peace and the affinity for battle. Yet, in that fragile hour, a weighty silence settled, like dew upon grass at dawn. Asahel sensed the stirring of the Holy Spirit, knowing deep within that this moment would mark a turning point in their history. As he lifted his arms to the heavens, he declared, "Let us fast and pray." For in the days of old, the people turned their faces to the Lord, and he answered them with fire and glory. Would you not seek the Lord's face before we march forth? It is a day for the divine to manifest his will among us. At once, the assembly bowed low, voices melding into a unified prayer, hearts ignited with the revelation of his glory. Asahel felt the vibrancy of the moment pulsing through him, as though the heavens opened wide, filling the void with anticipation, and so, it was decided, united in spirit, they would humble themselves and seek the Lord's counsel. A new path beckoned, filled with divine potential. But as the air crackled with promises, a cloud loomed on the horizon, an echoing whisper drove through their souls, but what shall they do when faced with the trials ahead? For God's plan unfolds beyond the veil of this moment, and the path to transformation often leads through the valley of shadow and light. As the light of dawn graced the horizon, twin shadows, the warriors of Asahel and the remnants of Abner's foes, began to blend as the essence of the Almighty's purpose unveiled before the assembly. In that fragile moment, the weight of their covenant manifested, and they felt the palpable shift in the atmosphere, as if the air quivered in anticipation of destiny. Asahel stood resolute, sensing the hesitance ebbing away, drawn forth by the courage ignited within their hearts. The God of our fathers has not abandoned us, he proclaimed with renewed fervor. He calls us not to strife but unification under his everlasting vow. Today, we embrace the truth that strength lies not in the sword but in his presence. Abner, shoulders squared with newfound courage, echoed Asahel's sentiment. Let us forge a future, not marked by bloodshed, but by harmony. The echo of our choices will resonate far beyond this moment, carving the path for generations to come. We are not merely warriors today, we are instruments of divine reconciliation. A murmur of agreement began to rise among the people, like rivers converging towards the sea. They recalled the might of their history, the parting of the Red Sea, the walls of Jericho trembling at the trumpet's call. What greater victory is there than the surrender of pride and the humble seeking of the Lord? Cried an elder, his voice pierced the atmosphere with faith. Then, as the clouds parted to reveal the brilliance of the sun, a holy radiance descended upon the assembly. A voice, gentle yet powerful, whispered through the crowd, "Choose life, then, that you and your children may live." The presence enveloped them, knitting their spirits together in the unbreakable bond of the covenant. Joab, sensing the tide turning, hesitated. The venom of vengeance still coursed through his veins, clashing with the dawning realization of unity's strength. He watched as warriors around him lowered their weapons, their hearts swayed by Asahel's unwavering faith. In his soul, a battle raged, yet amid the conflict, a flicker of doubt shone through his anger. What is to become of my men? Joab's voice cracked, revealing the turmoil buried beneath his hardened exterior. Have we truly reached the end of our struggle? Can we trust that peace will safeguard our future? Fearlessly, Asahel stepped forward, meeting Joab's gaze with unwavering resolve. To embrace peace is to trust in the Almighty's provision. Consider David, who fled from Saul not for cowardice but for the preservation of God, as promised the throne he was destined to inherit. Let us remember that even in the valley of shadows, he is our light and salvation. Abner raised his hands to quiet the lingering doubts. Will we not heed the divine calling, recognizing the generations forged by this moment? Let us not allow our legacy to be defined by the swords of our fathers, but by the covenant of peace bestowed upon our people. A profound silence enveloped the assembly, and their hearts swayed in unison as they felt the pulse of divine purpose vibrating within. With that singular moment, Joab's heart began to soften, the armor of bitterness cracking under the weight of truth. "I lay aside my pride," Joab admitted, his voice trembling. "If unity is our Father's desire, then let us pursue this path. May our hearts be one in service to God above all." This affirmation thundered through the assembly as cheers of jubilation erupted, filling the glade with reverberating echoes of hope. Hands grasped hands, embracing one another as warriors shed the burdens of strife and chose the path of righteousness. As the sun ascended higher, illuminating the fields of promise, Asahel led them in worship, a chorus of unity lifting into the heavens. "For the Lord is good, and his mercy endures forever. His love never fails, and today, we rise not as enemies but as a people healed and destined for the glory of his name." In the brilliance of that sacred moment, they set forth together bound not by the weight of past conflicts but propelled by a shared vision. Each step echoed the heart of God's promise, ushering in a new era of peace for his people, and so, the valley that had once trembled under the weight of swords now resonated with laughter, hope, and the assurance of a bright future. The adversaries of yesterday could no longer rob them of their joy, for they had risen above the shadows of strife, stepping boldly into the dawn of divine purpose in the days that followed, their hearts knitted tighter, and they became known throughout the land the people who chose peace over war, unity over division, and in doing so, became vessels of the Almighty's love and grace, lighting the path for generations eternally forged in the wisdom of surrender. As the history of Israel was forever altered, so too were lives transformed through their obedience to the call of God's heart. And let it be known across the pages of time, this chapter forged in the Valley of Decision served as a resounding testimony, echoing the truth, that in choosing divine unity, they found strength beyond measure. Now, dear friends, as you reflect on the power of this incredible story, I urge you, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next powerful biblical stories that can change lives. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm. Your support can transform hearts. Comment below your spiritual reflections on how this narrative of divine unity has impacted your faith journey, for your voice matters. And wait even one more second. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth today. You need to remain connected with God's word, and together, let us spread his light to every corner of the earth.